The professor called Earth a death world and humans barely functional. Then, the human student stood up and asked one question about gravity. The Galactic Youth Academy was supposed to be this great melting pot of species, right? A place where the best and brightest from across the coalition came together to learn, grow, and build the future. Sounds inspiring, does not it? Yeah. Well, most days it was just a bunch of teenagers from different planets trying to one-up each other about whose homeworld was superior. Same nonsense, different biology. Our classroom that day was packed with the usual crowd. There were 3 Quilven in the front row, those feathered speed freaks who came from a 0.6 gravity world and would not shut up about their reflexes. Behind them sat a pair of Myrene twins, aquatic types whose planet barely had 0.3 gravity, and they spent half the class in specialized hydration suits looking smug. A Torgathi kid named Blen sat near the back, crystalline body refracting light everywhere, from a 0.5 world where everything grew tall and delicate like living glass sculptures. Then there was Professor Zalith. Oh, Salith. A Venex from one of those ancient T-gravity core worlds where they practically floated through life. 6 arms, each one gesturing dramatically as he spoke, and a voice that dripped with the kind of superiority that comes from 10,000 years of recorded civilization. He taught comparative planetary physics, which sounds boring, but honestly it was one of the better classes, at least when he was not being a complete ass about it. That particular morning Zalith had decided our topic would be extreme planetary conditions, and how they shaped various species. He was pulling up hollows of different worlds, showing us the atmospheric compositions, gravity wells, temperature ranges, all the data that made each rock in space unique. Most of it was pretty standard stuff we had covered before. Gas giants, ice worlds, desert planets, the usual lineup. But then, then he pulled up Earth. 0.98 gravity, nitrogen, oxygen, atmosphere, liquid water, oceans, tectonically active, weather patterns that included hurricanes, tornadoes, and monsoons, a moon that caused tidal forces, axial tilt that created seasons, and apparently an oxygen concentration that was mildly toxic to half the species in the room if they stayed there too long. Salith looked at that data, all 6 arms crossed in this expression of theatrical disgust, and said, "And this, students, is what we call a death world. A planet so absurdly hostile that it is frankly miraculous anything evolved there at all, let alone a species arrogant enough to think they belong in the Galactic Coalition." The classroom erupted in laughter. Even I chuckled, because come on, 0.98 gravity? That was almost full standard. Who would willingly live like that? I had no idea someone in that room actually did. Professor Zalith was on a roll, and he knew it. Nothing energizes a teacher quite like an audience that is fully engaged, even if that engagement is mostly just mocking an entire planet. He expanded the holographic display of Earth, rotating it slowly so we could all appreciate just how ridiculous it looked. Blue and green and white, swirling with violent weather systems, tectonic plates grinding against each other like the planet itself was trying to tear itself apart. "Notice the gravity well," Zalith said, highlighting it in red. "Nearly 1 full standard G. Do you know what that means? It means every single step these creatures take requires almost triple the energy output of a Lothari. Every movement is a battle. Their own planet is trying to crush them flat every moment of their existence." One of the Quilven students, a kid named Riska, raised her wing. "Professor, is it true that humans cannot even jump properly? I heard they can barely get half a meter off the ground." Selith's facial membranes rippled with amusement. "Oh, it gets better than that. Their bone density is absurd. They have internal skeletons, like many of us, but theirs are reinforced to the point of being primitive clubs. And their muscle structure, well, let us just say they need every bit of it just to stand upright without collapsing." The Myrene twins were giggling in their hydration suits, bubbles rising from their breathing apparatus. One of them, I think it was Sella, spoke up through the translator. "How do they even build anything? Do they need machines for everything? I cannot imagine trying to construct a building when you can barely lift your own arms." "Actually," Salith said, clearly enjoying himself now, "humans are known for their stubbornness in this regard. They insist on doing much of their labor manually, even when more efficient options exist. It is quite sad, really. The species so limited by their environment, that they have romanticized struggle itself." Blen, the Torgathi student, chimed in with that crystalline voice of his. "I read that Earth has something called mountains, massive geological formations that reach kilometers into the sky, and humans, they climb them, for recreation. They literally fight against their own planet's gravity for fun." The whole class lost it at that. I mean, what kind of species does that? On Sika Prime, if we wanted to go up, we just jumped. Simple. Elegant. Efficient. The idea of slowly, painfully dragging yourself up a rock face just because it was there seemed like the definition of insanity. Death world mentality, Hyzolith said, shaking his primary head. When your planet spends millions of years trying to kill you, I suppose you develop some very strange coping mechanisms. Humans are walking examples of evolutionary trauma. Their fight or flight responses are hyperactive, their pain tolerance is unnaturally high, and their entire psychology is built around conflict and survival. Riska was practically bouncing in her seat, which, given Quilvan physiology, meant she was hovering about 10 centimeters off the chair. Is it true they still have wars, like actual physical conflicts where they hurt each other? I thought that was just propaganda. Salith's expression grew even more condescending, if that was possible. Oh no, that part is absolutely verified. Humans spent the majority of their pre-contact history engaged in various forms of organized violence. Tribal conflicts, resource wars, ideological battles, you name it. They even developed an entire philosophical framework around warfare. They have manuals on it. Strategy guides. It is barbaric. But again, consider the source. When you grow up on a planet that hostile, I suppose violence becomes normalized. I was laughing along with everyone else, completely wrapped up in the absurdity of it all. Poor humans, stuck on their nightmare planet fighting everything including each other, barely able to move under their crushing gravity. It seemed almost cruel that the coalition had even accepted them. What could they possibly contribute? That was when I noticed her. She was sitting in the back corner where the lighting was dimmer. Human. Obviously, though I had not registered her presence until that moment. Quiet. Still. Watching Professor Zeleth with an expression I could not quite read. Her name, I would learn, was Kira Heston, and she had heard every single word. Kira did not stand up immediately. She did not shout or slam her hands on the desk or do any of the dramatic things you see in entertainment vids. She just sat there for a moment, letting the laughter die down naturally, waiting until Professor Zeleth had finished basking in his own cleverness. Then, in a voice that was perfectly calm and almost friendly, she spoke. Professor, may I address the class? The room went quiet. Not because her voice was loud, it was not, but because most of us had genuinely forgotten there was a human in the room. Axalith turned, all 6 arms dropping to his sides, and you could see the momentary flicker of something, embarrassment maybe, cross his features before his usual arrogance reasserted itself. Of course, Miss Heston, he said, gesturing graciously as if he was doing her some grand favor. Please, enlighten us with the human perspective. Kira stood up, and I got my first real look at her. She was not particularly tall by human standards. I had seen the average height statistics, but she moved with this economy of motion that was unusual. No wasted energy. No unnecessary gestures. She walked to the front of the class, and I noticed something odd. Her footsteps were heavier than ours, obviously, but they were also perfectly controlled, deliberate. She turned to face us, hands clasped loosely in front of her, and smiled. It was not a mean smile, it was actually kind of pleasant, which somehow made what came next even more unsettling. So, she began, I have a question for all of you. What is the gravity on your homeworlds? Let us start with you, Riska. The Quilvan student blinked, caught off guard. 0.6, standard. And you? Sella, 0.3. The Marine answered, confused. Blen, 0.5. Kira nodded, looking around the room. Professor Zalith, your homeworld is 0.4, correct? 0.35 actually, Zalith said, still maintaining his superior tone, but I fail to see the relevance of this informal survey. Oh, it is relevant, Kira said, her smile never wavering, because here is what I am noticing. Every single person in this room comes from a low-gravity environment. The highest among you is 0.6, and you have spent the last 20 minutes laughing about how absurd it is that humans live under 0.98 gravity. You have called my planet a death world. You have suggested we are primitive, violent, and barely functional. She paused, letting that sink in. But has anyone here actually stopped to think about what living under that gravity means? Not in terms of limitations, but in terms of adaptations. Riska shifted uncomfortably. Well, I mean, obviously you would need stronger bones and muscles, but that is just compensating for a hostile environment, right? It does not make you better, it just makes you adequate for your own terrible planet. Adequate, Kira repeated, as if testing the word. Interesting choice. Tell me, Riska, how much can you lift? In standard weight units, what, maybe 20 kilos on a good day? And you? Sella, 15 maybe. We are aquatic, Our muscle structure is designed for swimming, not lifting. Kira nodded thoughtfully. Glenn, your crystalline structure is beautiful by the way, but I am guessing heavy lifting is not your strong suit either. We are more about precision than strength, Glenn said, sounding defensive. Our world does not require brute force. No, of course not, Kira agreed. Your worlds do not require it. Because your worlds are not trying to kill you every second of every day. You do not need dense bones because you are not constantly fighting gravity. You do not need redundant organ systems because your environments are stable and predictable. You do not need the ability to run for hours without stopping because nothing on your planets is trying to chase you down and eat you. Professor Zalat's facial membranes were starting to flatten, a sign of annoyance. Miss Heston, I appreciate the defensive posture, but evolution is about fitting your environment, not competing with others who evolve differently. Oh, I agree completely, Kira said. I am not competing with anyone. She paused and her smile took on a slightly different quality. I am just providing context. That was when Vrix spoke up. Vrix was this overconfident Quellan from a Point 4 world, all elongated limbs and translucent skin, the kind of kid who thought being older than everyone else by 2 cycles made him smarter. He had been snickering through the whole class, and now he saw an opportunity to reassert the original mockery. Context, he said, drawing out the word. Sure. Okay, you are stronger than us. Congratulations on being built like cargo haulers, but let us talk about the real issue here. The violence. You mentioned earlier, Professor, that humans have wars, actual wars. Kira, is that true? Does your gravity make you naturally violent, or is that just a cultural thing? The classroom leaned in. This was the juicy part, the scandalous bit that made humans seem like fascinating monsters. Even I was curious, I will admit it. We had all heard the stories. Humans and their endless conflicts, their weapons, their tactical brutality. It seemed so alien to those of us from civilized, peaceful, low-gravity worlds where disputes were settled through dialogue and arbitration. Kira's expression changed. The pleasant smile faded, replaced by something more neutral, more measured. She looked at Vrix for a long moment, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped a few degrees. Yes, she said simply. We have wars. We have had thousands of them throughout our recorded history. Vrix grinned, looking around at the rest of us like he had just won something. See? Barbaric. I mean, what kind of species just fights all the time? Is it the gravity? Does being heavy make you angry? It is not the gravity, Kira said, her voice still calm but with an edge now, something sharp underneath. It is the planet. Earth does not care if you live or die. It will kill you with weather, with predators, with disease, with geological events, with 1,000 different variables you cannot control. So yes, humans learn to fight. We learn to fight everything. The environment, the animals, each other. Because on Earth, if you do not fight, you die. It is that simple. Professor Salith tried to interject. Miss Heston, I think we are getting off topic. This is a physics class, not a history lesson. Kira ignored him. Her eyes were still on Vrix. You want to know about human warfare? Fine. Let me tell you about persistence hunting. That is where a human, or a group of humans, selects a prey animal, something faster and stronger than we are, and we just follow it. For hours, sometimes for days. We do not chase it in bursts like sensible predators. We just keep coming. The animal runs, exhausted, overheats, collapses, and then we kill it. That is what Earth gravity gave us. Endurance. The ability to just keep going long after everything else has stopped. The marine twins had stopped giggling. Glenn's crystalline structure had gone very still. We applied that same principle to warfare. Kira continued. When 2 human groups fight, it is not quick. It is not clean. We developed tactics, strategies, entire philosophical systems around the application of sustained violence. We created weapons that could kill from a distance because getting close was too risky. Then we created weapons that could kill from even farther away. Then we created weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. That is horrifying, Riska whispered. Yes, Kira agreed. It is. We spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. Swords, spears, arrows, guns, bombs, chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. We got very, very good at it. Do you know why? Nobody answered. Because we had to. Earth has limited resources, limited space, limited everything. And we had population pressures, territorial disputes, ideological differences. So we fought. We fought over water, food, land, religion, politics, resources we thought we needed to survive. And because of our gravity, because of our bone density and our muscle structure and our endurance, we became exceptionally efficient at warfare. She started walking slowly along the front of the classroom, and I noticed that several students leaned back as she passed, unconsciously putting distance between themselves and her. We have records going back thousands of years. The Punic Wars, the Mongol conquests, the World Wars, conflicts that killed millions, entire generations wiped out, cities burned, populations displaced. And through all of that we learned, we adapted, we became tacticians, strategists, soldiers, we wrote manuals on warfare, Sun Tzu Clausewitz, modern military doctrine, we built academies to teach combat, we glorified warriors in our culture because warriors were the ones who kept the tribe alive. Professor Zalit's facial membranes had gone completely flat. Miss Heston, I really must insist that we return to the lesson plan. Kira stopped walking and turned to face him. This is the lesson, Professor. You asked what living under Earth gravity does to a species. This is what it does. It makes you strong. It makes you resilient. And yes, it makes you dangerous, because when your planet spends millions of years trying to crush you, burn you, freeze you, starve you, and feed you to things with bigger teeth, you either learn to fight back or you go extinct. The silence in that classroom was absolute. We chose to fight. Vix, to his credit, or maybe his stupidity, was not done yet. He leaned back in his chair, trying to project casual dismissal even though his translucent skin had taken on a slightly darker hue, a Quellen's stress response. Okay, so you have got a violent history. Great, very impressive in a primitive sort of way. But that is all theoretical, right? I mean, you are standing here in a classroom, not a battlefield. You look pretty normal to me. A bit short, honestly. Kira tilted her head, considering him. You think I look normal? Sure. I mean, you are not doing anything special right now. Just talking. Right, Kira said slowly. Just talking. In 0.85 galactic standard gravity, which is what this station maintains for the comfort of the majority of species present. She looked around the room. Can I ask, does anyone here feel uncomfortable in this gravity? Is it too much for you? A few hesitant nods. Sella raised a hand. It is manageable, but I get tired faster here than I would at home. My muscles ache after a full day of classes. Exactly, Kira said. Because 0.85 is higher than what your bodies are designed for. You are all working harder just to exist in this space. Your hearts are pumping harder. Your muscles are compensating. Your skeletal systems are under more stress than they are used to. She smiled again, and this time it was almost apologetic. I barely notice it. For me, this is light, comfortable, easy. Before anyone could respond, Kira dropped to the floor and started doing push-ups. Not slow, struggling push-ups. Fast, controlled, perfectly formed push-ups. Her body moved like a machine, up and down, steady rhythm, no hesitation. The whole class just stared. She got to 50 and stopped, popping back up to her feet without even breathing hard. That is what Earth gravity does, she said, not even winded. Constant resistance training from birth. Every movement you make is working against 0.98 G. Walking, running, standing, sitting, everything. Your entire life is a workout. So when you come to a lower gravity environment, it feels like someone removed weights you did not know you were carrying. Glenn's voice was quiet. How much can you lift in this gravity or Earth gravity?
Either.
Kira shrugged. Here, I could probably manage about 120 kilos without much trouble. On Earth, maybe 70. I am not particularly strong by human standards, by the way. I am a student, not an athlete. Military personnel, laborers, people who train seriously. They can do significantly more. Riska was staring at her like she had just sprouted extra limbs. 120 kilos. That is more than 6 times what I can lift. Different evolutionary pressures, Kira said simply. You evolved for speed and agility in low gravity. I evolved for strength and endurance in high gravity. Neither is better or worse, just different adaptations. But her tone suggested she did not entirely believe that last part. Let me show you something else, she said. She started jogging in place, knees high, pace steady. Human cardiovascular systems are built for sustained activity. Our hearts are incredibly efficient pumps. Our lungs process oxygen at rates that would seem excessive to most of you. We sweat to cool down, which is gross. I know, but it is also an incredibly effective thermoregulation system. It means we can maintain physical activity for extended periods without overheating. She kept jogging, not even slightly out of breath. Persistence hunting, remember. We can run for hours. Not sprinting, we are not built for that. But steady, relentless jogging. Most prey animals on Earth are faster than us in short bursts, but they cannot maintain it. They have to stop, rest, cool down. We do not. We just keep coming. She stopped jogging and looked at Vex. You called us cargo haulers earlier. That was meant as an insult, I think. But you are not wrong. We are built to carry heavy loads over long distances in high gravity. We are built to endure, to outlast, to keep moving when everything else has stopped. Professor Zalith finally found his voice. Yes. Well, very educational demonstration, Miss Heston. But I think we have strayed quite far enough from comparative planetary physics. Kira nodded agreeably. Of course, Professor. I just thought it was important to provide some practical context to your theoretical mockery. The barb landed. Zalith's facial membranes flushed a darker color. Kira walked back toward her seat, and every single student tracked her movement. She was not threatening anyone. She was not posturing. She was just walking. But now we all saw it differently. Kira did not sit down right away. She paused at her desk, one hand resting on the back of her chair, looked at Professor Zalith with an expression that was almost thoughtful. The classroom was still dead silent. Nobody was laughing anymore. Nobody was making jokes about Deathworlders or primitive heavy-gravity species. We were all just waiting to see what would happen next. Professor, Kira said quietly, may I ask you a question? Zalith shifted his weight, all 6 arms moving in agitation. I suppose you have earned that right, given your rather theatrical presentation. Do you know why humans were initially rejected from the Galactic Coalition? That caught him off guard. His membranes rippled in confusion. Well, there were several factors. Technological limitations, cultural compatibility concerns, the standard probationary assessments. No, Kira said flatly, that is the diplomatic answer. The real answer, the one that is in the actual files if you bother to read them, is that the Coalition was afraid of us. Vex let out a nervous laugh. Afraid of humans? That is ridiculous. Kira turned to look at him, and he stopped laughing immediately. The first contact team that came to Earth spent 3 months studying us before making official contact. They watched our media, analyzed our history, reviewed our technological development, and do you know what conclusion they came to? That humans were the most persistently violent species they had ever encountered. Not the most advanced, not the most aggressive, the most persistent. She let that word hang in the air. They documented over 15,000 significant conflicts in recorded human history. They found evidence of warfare dating back tens of thousands of years. Stone Age humans fighting with rocks and sticks. Bronze Age civilizations with organized armies. Industrial Age nations with mechanized warfare. And the thing that terrified them was not the violence itself. Lots of species have violent periods in their development. It was that we never stopped. We never evolved past it. We just got better at it. Professor Zalith was no longer trying to redirect the conversation. He was listening, really listening. And his expression had shifted from irritation to something closer to concern. The contact team's report recommended quarantine, Kira continued. They suggested leaving Earth isolated for another 1,000 years, maybe longer, to see if we would mellow out, become more civilized, less dangerous. But obviously that did not happen, Glenn said, his crystalline voice barely above a whisper. You are here. Humans are in the coalition. Yes, Kira agreed, because cooler heads prevailed. Because some members of the coalition argued that isolating a species only makes them more paranoid and aggressive when they inevitably develop faster than light travel on their own. Because someone realized that humans, for all our violence, also have capacity for cooperation, innovation and adaptation. We got provisional membership, probationary status. We are still proving ourselves. She finally sat down, settling into her chair with that same controlled grace. But here is the thing that everyone seems to forget. Humans did not ask to evolve on a death world. We did not choose to develop under crushing gravity with predators that could kill us and weather that could wipe out entire settlements and a planet that was actively hostile to our survival. We just did, and we made it work. We became apex predators on a planet full of things bigger, faster, and stronger than us. We became the dominant species through sheer stubborn refusal to die. She looked around the classroom, making eye contact with each of us. So yes, make fun of our gravity. Mock our heavy bones and our excessive muscle mass and our ridiculous endurance. But remember what all of that actually means. Her voice dropped lower, almost gentle. It means we do not quit, ever. The chime signaling the end of class rang out, echoing through the suddenly too quiet room. Nobody moved. We all just sat there processing what had just happened. Professor Seleth stood frozen at the front, all 6 arms hanging limp at his sides, his usual pompous superiority completely deflated. He looked like he wanted to say something, maybe reassert control, maybe apologize, but the words would not come. Kira gathered her materials slowly, methodically, sliding her datapad into her bag with the same careful precision she had demonstrated throughout the entire exchange. She did not rush. She did not make a dramatic exit. She just packed up like it was any other day, like she had not just completely dismantled an entire classroom's worth of prejudice and arrogance in less than an hour. As she walked toward the door, she passed by my desk. I do not know what possessed me to do it, but I caught her eye. She looked at me, and for just a moment that slight smile returned. Not mean, not mocking, just acknowledging. Then she was gone. Footsteps echoing down the corridor with that same heavy, deliberate rhythm. The spell broke. Students started gathering their things, whispering to each other in hushed, shocked tones. Vrex looked absolutely pale, his translucent skin almost clear. Riska's feathers were flattened against her body in a posture of submission. The Morian twins were completely silent in their suits, bubbles rising slower than usual. I sat there for a while longer, staring at the empty doorway where Kira had disappeared. Everything I thought I knew about humans, about Deathworlders, about what it meant to come from a high-gravity planet had been completely rewritten. She had not threatened us. She had not needed to. She had just explained calmly and clearly exactly what humans were. Survivors. Adapters. Warriors who never stopped fighting, never stopped improving, never stopped pushing forward, no matter what the universe threw at them. Professor Seleth never brought up Earth again in class. Not once. The topic of death worlds became something we discussed academically carefully with a lot more respect than before, and whenever Kira walked into a room people noticed, not because she was loud or aggressive or trying to prove anything, but because we all remembered what she had taught us that day. Never ever underestimate a human. Their planet spent millions of years trying to kill them, and they won. That is not something you mock, that is something you respect.